Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, August the 26th, 2025. Today would be Mother Teresa's 115th birthday. She was born on August the 26th, 1910. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to look at her horoscope. The Virgo season is very much with us, and I regard Mother Teresa as being a very typical Virgo. If you look at her chart, and if you look at her life and some of the controversies she's involved in or was involved in, then you kind of see the influence of the Sun in Virgo. And so, yeah, that's my main theme in this video, and I'll be looking at that in the last part. But before I focus on Mother Teresa, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, August the 26th. So here is the chart for today, set for New York at noon, and we can see that the moon is in Libra, and it is conjunct Mars. So Moon conjunct Mars, it can be quite an angry combination. Moon-Mars conjunction, it likes to express itself, likes to express its feelings. Moon conjunct Mars can get angry, though it is in Libra. I mean, it's not like it's in Scorpio or Aries, so perhaps it's not quite as difficult as it looks. And with the Moon Mars conjunction, we are able to look after ourselves, and at the same time, we have to ask, is it worth getting involved in a dispute or an argument? Is it worth it? What are we fighting for? And it's possible that things could get out of hand. Now, you will notice that Mars is starting to make a square to Jupiter. So Mars is at 12 degrees Libra, making a square to Jupiter, 17 Cancer. So the Moon Mars conjunction is kind of picking up on that square, because the Moon makes a conjunction to Mars and then it moves on to a square of Jupiter. So things could be somewhat excessive today. I mean, that is a possibility. On the other hand, Venus is making a trine to Saturn. In fact, Venus is making a sextile to Uranus, and a trine to Neptune. So there is Venus just gone into Leo, making a trine to Saturn, and it's also making a trine to Neptune. And you could argue that Venus trine Saturn is quite stabilizing. It sort of brings things down to earth. And Venus in Leo wants attention, but maybe it's not so bad with making a trine to Saturn. And Venus trine Neptune, well, there can be fantasies with Venus trine Neptune, but I don't think they're the kind of fantasies you might expect with Venus square Neptune. Venus trine Neptune is it's a fairly easy aspect, and I don't think that it's going to be especially dramatic. Though with Venus in a very early degrees Leo, that does mean that it just picks up on the outer planets. You've got because all the outer planets are in early degrees. Okay, planets beyond Jupiter. So you've got Uranus at 1 degree Gemini. So Venus is making the sextile to Uranus. Venus making the trine to Saturn and Neptune, and it's applying to an opposition of Pluto. So in terms of relationships, that might mean that there's something rather unusual going on. It's perhaps not quite what one might expect. And Venus sextile Uranus is quite an exciting aspect, and that might indicate that relationships could take an interesting turn. So that's the main themes of today. And one other thing is that the moon is getting ready to move into the Via Combusta. So we'll find, in the Americas, late this afternoon, moon will move into the last half of Libra, and it will stay there for a couple of days. And that in the Americas, so late this evening, would that be late this evening? Yeah, sort of certainly this evening. In Europe and Africa, the moon will move into a Via Combusta. Then tomorrow, it'll be in a Via Combusta in Australia or New Zealand. So, yeah, moon Via Combusta, I just have to point it out. It's not an unusual event. It happens every month, but because the moon is in a Via Combusta between 15 degrees Libra and 15 Scorpio, a twelfth of the time the moon is in the Via Combusta. But when the moon is in the Via Combusta, things can happen. Things might not entirely work to plan. So just bear that in mind. Though I think the moon in the Via Combusta is more of a problem, when the moon moves into Scorpio during that last half of the sign Scorpio. And here is the view from a perspective of Sydney, Australia. The moon is just earlier in the sign. It's still in Libra. So I don't think that there's a huge amount of difference. Maybe if you're in Sydney, Australia or New Zealand, the moon conjunct Mars won't be quite as prominent, at least in the middle of the day. For example, during the working day, it may not be such a big deal. So there might not be so much anger, perhaps, or people might not be as sensitive as they are in the Americas. But I don't think there is a big difference between Australia, New Zealand, and the Americas. And then there is the heliocentric picture. Now, I should say my computer is making a lot of noise at the moment, and I've been sort of delaying switching out my computer for the last year. And I mean, I've had a computer, I've been getting ready to switch it, but it's just been too much aggravation. And I think I've now realized that I need to change my computer. So do bear with me, and over the next couple of days, I'm not going to make a promise, but I'm going to hopefully move to a more a quieter computer, a computer that doesn't demand so much attention. So I thought I'd mention that. And so here is the heliocentric view. It's set as always for noon. But it doesn't really matter so much because we don't look at the moon in the heliocentric chart because the Earth and the moon are in the same place from a perspective of the sun. And so what we have here is we have an exact Mercury-Venus conjunction. And it is good news. I think that Mercury and Venus, as I was saying yesterday, it's a great combination. It's about talent. It's about what we can do, what we can create, what we can communicate. We can communicate how wonderful we are. If you look at Reinhold Ebertin in the combination of stellar influences, the great thing about Reinhold Ebertin in this book, the combination of stellar influences, he's very brief. So he doesn't give huge descriptions of the various astrological configurations. He just keeps it simple, and he says about Mercury-Venus. In fact, he says about the Mercury-Venus conjunction. He says a sense of beauty, grace, light-hearted living, and merriment. And it's also about beauty, and of course, he says thoughts of love. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because Mercury is thoughts, Venus is love, so that does make a lot of sense. So beauty, art, what we can do to make the world more attractive, perhaps to make ourselves more attractive, and the way we speak, the way we communicate. But this is a heliocentric conjunction between Mercury and Venus, so it's not quite so personal, and it just may be that this is a time to think about the beauty and harmony of the universe and to put it into practice so that we can become, if you like, the lightning rods. We can be the transmitters of something which not everyone is in touch with. So I think that aspect, Mercury-Venus conjunction, is entirely fortunate. So that is the heliocentric view, and now I want to turn to the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, August the 26th, 2025. Aries, you might have to be careful when it comes to dealing with other people, because there is a conjunction between the moon and Mars, and this moon-Mars conjunction is not entirely easy. I mean, it's in your opposite sign of Libra, and there are many things out there that just could irritate you. I mean, Aries does have a reputation for being an angry sign. I think it's a fairly unfair, it's reputation. When Aries gets angry, it's often very quick. It's just a quick storm, and Aries as a sign is very good at forgiving and forgetting, and they can get absolutely furious about something, and then sort of an hour later they can say, what was all the trouble about? All things being equal. But this Moon-Mars conjunction does tie up with Jupiter, because the moon makes a conjunction to Mars and then it makes a square to Jupiter. So what's happening is that Mars, your ruler, is starting to make a square to Jupiter. So that could be energizing. You do find that you have a lot of energy at your disposal and you want to do something with it. When the question is, what do you do with it? And it is not going to take much to get you angry, to get you annoyed if people aren't behaving in the way you expect, and you will possibly insist on being taken seriously, and you will have strong views. So the area of relationships could be somewhat complicated, and there is the question of who is getting angry. Are you getting angry, or is someone else getting angry? And it doesn't take much to get you irritated. Yet at the same time, Aries, your ability to get people's attention is very good, and you can come over, if you want, as very charming and the kind of person someone wants to get close to. I mean, you're not boring, not at all boring. You've got an energy that is very attractive, but the question is, when does that energy switch? Because you can switch. If something doesn't go right, you can just suddenly show your anger. So it needn't be a bad day. In fact, from a relationship point of view, it could go anyway. I mean, it could go in several different directions. I mean, you have the capacity to listen to people, to understand them, to really try to understand what they are saying and what they're trying to communicate. And the question is, are you going to be able to keep quiet? Are you going to be able to listen and just take on board what you're hearing? Or are you going to feel a great need to intervene? And that might be an issue. And so as a result of that, one key thing to try to be is to be disciplined. And one aspect we have today is Venus trine Saturn. So Saturn is in your sign. It's getting very close to 0 degrees Aries, so you could say that Saturn is quite prominent at the moment. And so with Venus trine Saturn, that should be about you taking control of the situation, and taking control not just of what's going on outside, but also taking control of your own feelings, and perhaps having strong feelings about another person, both negative and positive, and being able to keep those feelings to yourself. And that doesn't mean repressing them, by the way. It just means just making sure that they don't get out of hand, and not always thinking that you have got all the answers. This is a time where many people are very creative. Many people have got a lot to offer, and you've got to give them a chance. And if you say too much, or if you intervene, or you interrupt, you could be just spoiling the flow, and maybe it's a day to let other people and to let the world in general, show you, what they've got to offer. Taurus, there is a trine aspect between Venus and Saturn today, and this Venus trine Saturn is certainly stabilizing. It can stabilize you, and it can really sort of bring you down to earth, and you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. It's not that kind of day. I mean, other people might have ideas, but do you have to follow through on that? No, you don't. You can just be yourself in your own way, and there may be temptations to do things. I think there probably will be, but if you just hold firm, that is the best approach, I think, with this trine between Venus and Saturn, and and don't take things further than you need to. There is a possibility that you just get caught up in ideas and feelings and even fantasies that aren't very constructive, and if you try to follow them through, well, you might be on a hiding to nowhere. And so, be calm and be questioning, and don't assume that everything is as it seems. So if something seems attractive and exciting, well, you can just watch. You don't have to be part of it. And so, what's the best way of using today's energies? Well, you certainly want to be an individual. I think that is important. You don't want to forget your individuality. Venus is making a quite exciting sextile to Uranus, and then the question is, where is the best place to focus this individuality? And well, what is it that makes you special? What is it that makes you different? And where is the best environment to be an individual? And the best environment to be an individual, to be yourself, is somewhere where you're not being disturbed, where you're not being bothered. If your life is cluttered up with other people and their problems, well, you're not really going to be able to express yourself properly. And so if you want to do something special, then the best place to do something special is at home, or somewhere where you are in complete control. If you go out of your way to go somewhere, then you're going to find that your overall impact is watered down. And while you're at it, Taurus, make sure that you concentrate on the details that matter. If you want to be an individual, if you want to do something special, then you do have to make sure that you do it properly, and that means working it out for yourself. I don't think that today it's a great time to be getting outside assistance, because it would just annoy you, and indeed you might not get a great deal of appreciation if you spend too much time with people. I don't think that would work out, though there is a Moon-Mars conjunction today. And how is this Moon-Mars conjunction going to work? Well, in a completely negative way, the Moon-Mars conjunction could just be about disagreements, disagreements about stupid things, things that aren't worth disagreeing with. Just things that are a matter of approach. It's not really about who's right and who's wrong. Different people have different ways of doing things, and so you don't want to be in a situation where you're discussing matters of approach, because everyone has different views, and you might find that you get yourself into an argument about nothing. And so if something is not safety critical, then just do it in your own way, and perhaps don't seek help or advice, and that might be the best way of dealing with the day's energies. Though on a sort of more positive side, Moon-Mars conjunction, there is a lot of action there. It's quite active, but so it's just important that you focus that action in terms of just making your life more simple. You don't want things to be complicated, and that Moon Mars conjunction is in Libra. Libra is about balance. You want to feel that you're in a balanced environment, and I'm really feeling that. Actually myself. I've got Taurus rising, and so I'm kind of speaking to myself, but I'm listening to a very noisy computer. Maybe you're listening to my noisy computer as well, and I'm thinking, well, I've got to sort this out. I've got to clear a space. I've got a new computer. Well, I've had a new computer for over a year, and I haven't done anything with it. I haven't got it together to find a space to sort of connect a monitor and all of this kind of thing. It's not good, and so I'm looking at this Moon Mars conjunction in Libra, and I'm thinking, well, I need to get my act together, and I need to be in a more sort of harmonious environment. And I don't want to project anything on you, but maybe there is some resonance there, that if things can be calmer and less cluttered, and you can put things together that have been waiting to be put together, and okay, mate, your situation is not as bad as mine, but maybe there's still a resonance there. So yeah, Taurus, I'm not saying that it's going to be a super exciting day, and it's a reason it's not going to be super exciting, because I don't think that you can really benefit from outside interactions. To have real excitement, you probably need other people around you and whatever. It's more about what you are doing, but in your own way, in your own place, you can find excitement, and you can find things that are new, and you don't need anyone else to provide them, because you can be original. And when you're alone or just surrounded by people who are on your wavelength, that is a time when you can really maximize your special qualities, whatever they might be. Gemini. There is a conjunction between the Moon and Mars today, and this Moon-Mars conjunction is in Libra, and so Libra is a sign which is, broadly speaking, Gemini-friendly, and the Moon-Mars conjunction is going to enable you to, I think, be fairly creative. If there are things you want to do, then you can certainly do them. You have the opportunity, and you shouldn't hold back. Perhaps you've in the past been too questioning. You've doubted whether it was really worth it. Whether you'd get flack if you were to be yourself, but not anymore. I think you can be confident to do what is important to you, and to really give it your everything. Moon conjunct Mars it's a high energy conjunction, and so ask yourself what is important to you. Yesterday there might have been some delays, or you might have felt you didn't really have the confidence to see things through. You didn't have the confidence to be creative, but now things have changed, and I think, Gemini, you can really be yourself, and remember, you have all the resources you need. You might not think you have the resources, but that could be an excuse. Now, you might think, for example, oh, you've got to buy something. You want to do something. It's going to cost money. Perhaps there's a piece of equipment you need, or you need to go somewhere, or you've got to get a ticket to somewhere, or whatever. You don't have to buy anything, but there's a temptation there, because the Moon, it makes a conjunction to Mars, but it then moves on to make a square with Jupiter, and that Moon square Jupiter could, under certain circumstances, be expensive. There's certainly a temptation to spend money, and you might justify expenditure by saying, oh, you need it in order to do whatever you want to do, but I don't think that's right. If something is really important and is really an essential part of who you are, then it doesn't need to cost you anything at all. And at the same time, Gemini, right now you do have a lot of power, You can, decide that you want something, and then you can give it everything you've got. And so, don't doubt yourself, and don't doubt yourself in terms of your ability to make things happen. So if you have a belief that something can be, that something can manifest, then trust yourself, and trust yourself to make it happen. And don't let doubt get in your way, because doubts are annoying. And if you have doubts, that could just spoil things. And so, if you really believe something can happen, I mean, you have to, but it needs to go beyond belief. It needs to move to the realm of will, just having the will to make something happen. And so, do decide what you want to happen, Gemini, and you might be pleasantly surprised by how it all works out. So it does go beyond faith, and you've got to just know that if you handle it right, you can get what you need. Cancer. The problem today might be a conjunction between the Moon and Mars. And, the Moon and Mars is quite an angry aspect. I mean, Mars is an angry planet. And so when you've got Moon making a conjunction to Mars, there is potentially a lot, Cancer, for you to get annoyed about. And you can be annoyed just by, doing nothing. And if you spend time at home, which I think you want to do, you don't feel you want to do anything special. You may not be able to spend time at home. You've probably got other things to do, but that's what you'd like to do. You want to keep things simple. You don't want to put yourself out at the moment. Certainly with the Moon in Libra, but if you do spend too long in one place with this Moon conjunct Mars, you just could find yourself getting angry and getting tense. And that might mean, Cancer, that you do need some variety. And so try to look at what else is going on. I mean, we have got, the Moon is, the Moon is making a sextile to Jupiter. Square to Jupiter, and Moon square Jupiter, may not be such a bad aspect. I mean, it is a square, but then you've got Jupiter moving through your sign, and so perhaps the Moon square Jupiter may encourage you to take what you have, take your energy, and to find something useful to put it into, and don't just focus on one thing, because if you do focus on one thing, then you're going to get obsessed and you're going to get angry, and you do have a lot of energy at your disposal, perhaps too much energy, and so don't take things too far, and don't exaggerate. Though, going back to your home with this Moon Mars conjunction, I mean, if you're disciplined, then maybe it needn't be such a bad thing. Maybe you can do a lot of work at home, creating big changes, and provided everyone is supportive, and your family particularly are supportive, then it's okay. But it's just that if anyone resists you, then you won't take kindly to it, and your reactions may be exaggerated, and you might end up in a situation that is fairly regrettable. So stability does matter. I think that is very important today, and you shouldn't allow your own emotions to trip you up. Leo, you're at the moment fairly good-natured. You're trying. You're really trying, and you know that it's important to get on with people, and whoever they are, you know how to behave. Now, that doesn't mean to say you will always behave in a sympathetic way, but you have the capacity to, because you just know you know what to do, you know what to say, you know what not to say, And so, do as far as possible think about other people and think about your relations with them, and don't be afraid of getting close to people, because you will in general carry yourself very well. And perhaps with the sun in Virgo, your attention to detail is going to be excellent, and you'll notice things and you'll remember things, and because of that you can get people's support, and they will trust you. I mean, Leo can be a very trustworthy sign. I mean, it is fixed. It doesn't go off on tangents, and so do make the most of your social skills today, for whatever reason. Although it might not just be about your benefit, it can be about other people's benefit, because I think that today you have the capacity to make people feel happy and calm. And we have Venus making a trine to Saturn, and that Venus trine Saturn, that's a great aspect. Venus is just moving into Leo, so you've got Venus moving in through your sign for a bit of time. Let me be precise. You've got Venus moving through Leo until around the 19th of September. So that's quite a long time. So with Venus moving through Leo, you're able to be pleasant, and people are going to like you. And then Venus makes a trine to Saturn, and Venus trine Saturn is certainly a calming influence, and it might also say something about close relationships. Close relationships can work very well. You will know how to behave, you'll know how to present yourself, and if you know someone well, that means you'll know what to do, and you'll know how to treat them properly. So ideally, it should just be a day where you really take advantage of your social and interpersonal resources, and ideally, you shouldn't be alone. I think that would be unnecessary, and really try to benefit from other people. But different Leos have different circumstances, and it's not necessarily all about other people. With Venus in Leo, for example, you can be very artistic and creative, and you at the same time can have access to things which you don't normally understand, that are just quite cosmic. And you can take things which seem otherworldly, and you can bring them down to earth, and that doesn't need anyone's help. And so if you are of an artistic or spiritual bent, then I think that this Venus trine Saturn and Venus trine Neptune is going to allow you to take something which no one understands, apparently no one understands, and you can. It's a chaotic concept. I mean, it perhaps is represented by Saturn and Neptune making this conjunction. Something going on out there in the universe that is difficult, but it's also very creative, and it represents a future. So there may be a prophetic side to it, and you can take it and you can make sense of it, and perhaps you can make sense of it through artistic expression. A picture, a poem, a painting. Even if you're not an artist, you can do something, create something which in a way is a symbol of what is going on out there. And it might seem strange, but sometimes one uses symbols to understand what is going on. And so making something, even if it seems crude or unsophisticated, it is an expression of what is going on out there. Virgo, you're able at the moment to get on with people in your own way. You know what's important. You by and large know how to behave, and of course the sun is moving through your sign, and so with the sun moving through your sign, you're feeling an awareness of, what needs to be done, and perhaps you're not as crazy and impulsive as you were a couple of days ago, and you're now realizing, well, it's a Virgo season, and therefore you can ground yourself. And the sun is, right now, the sun is the only planet in Earth signs, and that may say something about you. A lot of other people may not be very grounded. They may be trying, but they're not doing a good job. And you may be the one that really understands what is important. And so, Virgo, don't be afraid of sort of thrashing out the details in that Virgoan way, because no one else will. And maybe no one else understands what's going on. So if you want to be very materialistic, then go ahead. People will be happy for you to behave in such a way, because they don't get it, but you do get it. And so if you're in a group of people, you are the one that understands what's important, and you are the one that can prioritize the crucial details. And one crucial detail might be money. I mean, there is a conjunction between the Moon and Mars in Libra today, and when we think about Libra in a Virgo chart, well, Libra is quite a financially orientated sign, and with Mars moving through Libra, this is a time when Virgos are thinking a fair amount about money, and what needs to be done with money, and where there's a financial issue, there is also the possibility of an argument. And when you've got Moon conjunct Mars, it's just possible that not everyone will agree with you when it comes to financial matters. And the question is, what do you do about that? I mean, I think you are very sure of your ground, with good reason. And so perhaps if you think something is important financially, you should, just get on with it and not consult too much with other people. Just give the impression that everything is under control, that you know what you're doing. Okay, it's possible that you might not know what you're doing. It's possible that you're planning on doing something completely crazy with money, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you just making sure that everything is under control, that bills are paid. For example, if you and someone else share the paying of bills, don't necessarily assume that it's another person's responsibility. Sometimes you just have to take the initiative. Okay, I suppose if someone is just refusing to accept a financial obligation, then Virgo, you might have no choice. You might have to remind them of what needs to be done. They might not appreciate it, but sometimes it can't be helped. Now, from a heliocentric view, there is a conjunction between Mercury and Venus today, and I think that this Mercury-Venus conjunction is pretty fortunate, and it is very creative, and it may say something about another side to your personality that maybe you're not giving full expression to. Mercury-Venus is about art, and it's about beauty, and it's about getting it right, and getting it right in an aesthetic way. And when one thinks about creativity, one thinks about something fairly unstructured very often. You do what you want to do. You go where the spirit takes you, but it's not quite like that. You do need some control. You do need some discipline. Otherwise, it becomes a complete mess. And at the moment, from an artistic point of view, Virgo, you have the discipline to create things which are of lasting value, and also you're able to express something that not everyone understands. You're perhaps able to express changes going on at a higher level. We have a conjunction, for example, between Saturn and Neptune, and not everyone understands it, but maybe even you don't understand it. But through your creative output, you can create something which just demonstrates what that Saturn-Neptune is all about. And so that Mercury-Venus conjunction, I would have said, it is creative. It does allow you to talk about your creativity and to explain your creativity and to explain from an artistic point of view, what is important. And I think in most cases, people will understand you. Libra, there is a certain amount of activity in your sign. We have a conjunction between the Moon and Mars in Libra, and this Moon-Mars conjunction, I would regard as being, fairly dynamic, and you want to show the world who you are and what you can do, and there might be a feeling with this conjunction between the Moon and Mars that you behave in a way that is somewhat sort of uncharacteristic. Sometimes Librans can try to keep the peace and don't want to upset or offend anyone, and they're careful what they say. But this Moon-Mars conjunction is potentially very much in your face. It wants attention, and it's got strong views, and it's tied up with Jupiter. So Jupiter is in Cancer, Mars is moving to a square with Jupiter, and then so the Moon is having made the conjunction to Mars, it makes a square to Jupiter, and you put this all together, Libra, and it does make you very powerful and potentially ambitious as well. And if things aren't going fast enough for you, Libra, then you're going to want to get things moving. And so don't feel that you have to hold back, don't feel that you have to be polite. And so whatever it is you want, do make sure that you get it. And as far as the best approach, there is some danger, Libra, that you use language that is perhaps uncharacteristic. You might use harsh words if you're under pressure, words that you don't normally use. And if you want to hurt someone's feelings, you certainly can. You know how to be cutting. And it's not just about words, it's about your own thoughts. And some of your thoughts may be very un-Libran. You could have very negative thoughts, thoughts which you're not very proud of. You're thinking, did you think that? That's quite a disturbing thing to think. But it's okay. You can have whatever thoughts you like, and if you're in a situation where you have really hostile, negative, destructive thoughts, you perhaps have to ask yourself why. Why are you having these kind of thoughts? And you might be having those kind of thoughts because you're feeling frustrated, because things aren't moving quickly enough. And so the best antidote to that is to make sure that things really are moving. Because I think that today, Libra, it should be a high energy day. You do have a lot of energy, and it's just very important that you make use of it, and you at the same time are able to take control, because Venus is making a trine to Saturn. Venus is your ruler, it's trine to Saturn. So if you make the effort, you can bring people under control, and you can not just understand them, but get them to help you and get them to cooperate. And if you handle it right, they'll want to cooperate. And also we've got Venus sextile Uranus. Venus sextile Uranus, makes you exciting. You know how to do things which get people's attention. And so don't hold back. Don't be embarrassed. You might think that if you're completely open about your feelings and your opinions, that you might get a negative reaction. I don't think that's true. So of all the 12 signs, Libra, it could be argued that, all things being equal, that you're going to have one of the better days of the 12. So you have a real advantage here. And if I were to give today a star rating, and if you were to make the most of everything in front of you, I would certainly give you 5 stars out of 5. Scorpio. There is a conjunction between the moon and Mars. And this moon-Mars conjunction could well have an impact on you. And it is potentially high energy. I mean, the moon is conjunct your Mars. It's quite an emotional conjunction. And so, there's a lot you want to do, and there's a lot you want to express, but it is in Libra. And so today you might find that you can't do everything that you want to do. That you are being held back. And that could be quite frustrating. And so, what do you do? Well, I don't think that you necessarily have to do anything. You just have to do what's important to you. And it's not about being reliant on another person. That's why you might get annoyed. You might get annoyed because you're expecting someone to do something and they don't do it. And that is frustrating. But you have to be in a situation where you are in control of your own destiny, and you very much can be. And you don't have to make a noise. You don't have to shout. You don't have to be desperate for support. And in fact, in some ways, Scorpio, the less you're noticed, the better, because then you can just get on with things in your own way. And additionally, we do have Venus very close to 0 degrees Leo. Venus has just gone into Leo, and Venus can really work for you. It makes you powerful, and if you do have to deal with other people, you can come over as being quite charming and charismatic. Even if you find these people annoying, you don't have to show your annoyance, and just by having a disciplined approach, you can make sure that existing relationships are held in place, that no one gets upset. Don't get upset yourself, and also transmit a vision of how you want things to be. And your first task is perhaps to transmit that vision to yourself, and you can get on with it. And I don't think you need anyone else's help. Though, from a relationship viewpoint, if relationships are important to you, Scorpio, then I do think that it can be a pretty good day. There's just something about you at the moment that people are going to like, provided you don't reveal some of your annoyances and frustrations. Some things have to be kept secret. But if you can do that, then people are going to like you, and you can get closer to people, and you can also sort of bring people together, and even demonstrate some wider vision of a way things should be. Be enthusiastic, be open to new possibilities, and explain to other people that they can be part of these possibilities, and they're going to like that. And so, Scorpio, use your strengths, and there are things you're angry about, but I think that it's best that anger is kept to yourself, at least for the moment. Sagittarius. There is a conjunction between the moon and Mars today, and this moon-Mars conjunction is high energy, and it's important that you use that energy in the right way. I would have said that the best way of using this moon-Mars conjunction is to think about other people. If you can be with other people, that would be best. People need someone like you around, because you want action. maybe other people are not quite prepared to move as fast as you want to move, but if you can take the initiative, then I do think that that would, very much, be appreciated. And, additionally, Sagittarius, people want something different, something new. And Sagittarius, you are someone who is very much able to provide it. So if you have an idea, then feel free, tell people about this idea, and don't worry if some of your ideas seem controversial, because that is what is required, and you're able to project yourself and your vision in a way that is going to cause a certain amount of disruption, but not too much disruption. And that is reflected by the fact that the Sun is still making a square to Uranus. That Sun square Uranus impacts you, and it's in mutable signs. It's Sun in Virgo, Uranus in Gemini. Jupiter is still, by the way, on the Sun-Uranus midpoint, so that really does allow you to stir things up, and you don't have to keep everything to yourself. And so someone's got to get things moving, and that person can be you. So Sagittarius, it looks like being an okay day. I think that you don't have to take things too far. I mean, there is a square between the Moon and Jupiter, and so with that Moon-Jupiter square, yeah, your social life might be important to you. You might have people around you, but things can be taken too far. That is possible with Moon square Jupiter, particularly towards the end of the day. So, by all means, socialize, have people around you, but also know when to stop. Know when things are as good as they can get, and be ready to make a swift exit. So that way you've got a good chance of staying out of trouble. Capricorn. For many of us, regardless of our sign, it could be quite a people-orientated day. And, that is because the planet Venus is, getting a lot of aspects. Venus is trine Saturn, Venus is sextile Uranus, Venus is sextile Neptune. So for many of us, other people can't necessarily be ignored, and we are, very aware of their influence on us. And, as far as you're concerned, Capricorn, you really, pick up on this because Venus is making a trine to Saturn, and, you're very aware of other people, and you're aware of their influence, but also you're aware of a problem, or at least you think there might be a problem. You know that it's easy to get crowded out if you give people too much space. If you let them run free rein, well, that could be a problem. But that's not going to happen, is it? Because Venus trine Saturn does allow you to be in firm control. And you can do it without causing any fuss, without getting negative feedback, because you're very clear about who you are and what you want, and people will notice this, and they will respect it. And additionally, you can make your own decisions socially, and not just socially, but people in general, whether it's partners, contacts, whatever. You make a decision that something needs to be done, or you want someone to do something, and you can execute this decision. And so in this sense, Capricorn, you're going to be pretty assertive today. And another reason why I think you could be quite assertive today is the fact that there is a conjunction between the Moon and Mars. And this Moon-Mars conjunction is in Libra. And Libra is a sign in which Saturn is exalted. So Libra is a sign that has a natural sympathy with you. And so with this Moon Mars conjunction, if there's anything you want, you think it's important, then Capricorn, you can really go for it, and your ambitions will be clear. And once you've decided that you want to go in a particular direction, then you can do it. And I don't think anyone is going to stop you. I mean, they're not going to reasonably stop you. I think that with Moon conjunct Mars, it does have an angry dimension to it, and there might be some resistance, there might be questions, but you can deal with it all. And so don't feel, Capricorn, that anything is impossible. You have the willpower, you have the strength of personality, you have the dynamism, and now is the time, Capricorn, to really show the world what you can do. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, it kind of depends. I mean, there is a fair amount of energy around the place. I mean, it is a high energy day, and so relationships could leave a lasting impact if you decide to put energy into this area of your life. And so one person having to deal with the entirety of the Capricorn personality, well, that could be perhaps too much for them, and you have to decide what you want. And you could try to be sympathetic and try to understand what another person is doing, saying, but you're quite focused on yourself and your own priorities. And because of that, it just might be that relationships should perhaps be de-emphasized. I mean, relationships can happen. I mean, there can be exciting relationships. The moon is making a square to Jupiter, but it just might become all too much, and there might be a clash of priorities. So maybe you shouldn't be focusing too much energy on just one person, and maybe you should have a broader approach. And also perhaps what really matters, Capricorn, today is your own agenda, whatever that agenda might be. And if you follow it through and you give that agenda all your energy, then I think that you're going to be able to make a fair amount of progress. Aquarius, where there is a conjunction between the Moon and Mars today, and this conjunction between the Moon and Mars is in an air sign, it's in Libra. And so with this conjunction between the Moon and Mars, there are perhaps things that you want to explore, that you've been thinking about for some time, and now is an opportunity to to see what is available. And that you haven't got all the answers, that there are still things to discover. And so try to ask lots of questions, and perhaps consider moving into areas that in the past you just haven't touched, you haven't thought they were important, but now you're thinking again and thinking, yeah, maybe it is important. It is a time of change. The seasons are changing. Certainly in the northern hemisphere, it's the end of August. It's nearly autumn, and so you need something else. You haven't got everything you need, Aquarius, and so try to look beyond your immediate environment. And of course, with that Moon Mars conjunction, it could be about putting a lot of energy into learning something. And this is perhaps what Mars in Libra is about. One aspect of Mars in Libra. So Mars has been in Libra for a bit of time, and Mars, I think, stays in Libra until I think it's September the 22nd, off the top of my head. So yeah, is that right? Yeah, till September the 22nd. So between now and the equinox, Aquarius, it's important to review what you know and what you don't know, and you've got a month to learn new stuff. I mean, not just for the sake of it, because you have to. And so if there's something you feel you really need to know and you really need to learn about, then just go for it. And I'm not talking about sort of any sort of long-term course necessarily, just something that you can study in your own way, in your own time, whether it's through books, the internet, talking to people, because you don't know everything, and you don't know everything. And with this Moon-Mars conjunction, that just gives you the impetus to make a start. And it's you can make a lot of progress very quickly. And then the Moon makes a conjunction to Mars, and it makes a square to Jupiter. I mean, Moon square Jupiter can be quite a chaotic and ill-disciplined aspect, but for you, Aquarius, it just could be about just getting yourself together, telling yourself you're not going to be chaotic, and you're going to decide on one thing. You're going to really make the most of it, and in the process you expand your horizons. And expanding your horizons is not just anything. It's not just some vague concept. It's about expanding your horizons so that you're able to deal with future challenges. And another aspect we've got today is a trine between Venus and Saturn. I mean, Venus and Saturn, it's a great aspect, particularly for an Aquarian. And Venus is in Leo, your opposite sign, and that is very much to do with relationships. And so with Venus making a trine to Saturn, that does indicate that there's someone out there who you can really get on well with, for whatever reason, and you'll find that you're able to communicate very effectively, and not just effectively, but also respectfully. It's not like you're trying to convince anyone to change their mind or to do something they don't want to do. You can respect another person's viewpoint, and at the same time you can show them what kind of a person you are, and you will demonstrate that perhaps you're not a threat, and they will demonstrate to you that they're not a threat to you. So that Venus trine Saturn, if you want to get on with someone, even if there have been recent problems, even recent arguments, I think that Venus trine Saturn could be very helpful. Pisces. The Moon is in a Libra, still in Libra. I went into Libra yesterday, and with the Moon in Libra, it's not an entirely easy place for it to be from a Pisces viewpoint. It can make things more complicated than they have to be, especially as the Moon is making a conjunction to Mars. And with this Moon conjunction to Mars, there could just be things that you are maybe sort of upset about or confused about, and they're quite deep. They're not things you necessarily want to talk about, but they are real, and it could be about insight. You have insight into things that other people just don't understand. That if you were to tell people what's on your mind, you might not get a particularly positive response, so perhaps it's best to keep quiet. On the other hand, Pisces, if you feel that you want to create a change, if you want to get people to sit up and listen, then that is something that you very much can do. You can do something that no one was expecting. And it's not just about shock. I think that there are people who are getting bored. They know that something has to change. They don't want to create the change themselves. Maybe that's you. You're just waiting for something to happen. But who is the agent of change? Now, the agent of change, Pisces, could be you. Now, you might not want to adopt that role, but if you want to shake things up and force people to sit up and listen, you very much can. And perhaps it's about taking the kind of sort of insights and the anger represented by that Moon-Mars conjunction in Libra, and taking it and making it real, and somehow verbalizing it, and people listening, and people understanding that you're serious. So do take yourself seriously, Pisces, and don't assume that it's down to other people to take the initiative. I mean, that is a tendency there now that the sun has gone into Virgo. So with the sun in Virgo, it can be a time when Pisceans just don't want to do anything, or rather they want to let other people take the initiative. But you have to remember that it's not just that you've got the sun in Virgo, but you've got the south node in Virgo. So the south node is the path of least resistance. It's what comes easiest to you. And what comes easiest to you right now is to do nothing, let other people do the stuff, let other people take the initiative. But the North Node is in Pisces. The North Node is action. It's about what you should be doing. It's where you should be going. And the right thing to do, Pisces, at the moment, is to be the one who takes the initiative, the one who offers change, the one who is disrupting. Okay, I understand that might not be what you want to do, but I think that in terms of your destiny, it probably is the right approach. It might be painful at first. You might just be embarrassed. You might think no one cares, but they do care. And you once you show the world who you are, they're going to listen. And in the process, I think that you will be, fulfilling your short-term destiny. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. So let me now turn to the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 12, which is standstill. So the day does not start well. It feels as if things are stuck, and everything is in the wrong place. You look at this hexagram. You've got the top 3 lines unbroken. Bottom 3 lines are all broken. So everything's in the wrong place, and everything is very stuck. And the bottom trigram represents the Earth, and the Earth is stuck in itself, and the Earth is not moving. And the top trigram represents a heaven, and the heaven has closed the trap door. You're not going to get up there, and so it feels stuck, and it might also feel that the forces of negativity are in the ascendancy, or even the forces of evil, if you want to see it like that. And so you might feel that it's all hopeless, that there's no point in doing anything today. And that's the end of it. Fortunately, there is a moving line. The 5th line moves. And in the I Ching, the 5th line tends to be fortunate. And so this 5th line is fortunate. And there are a couple of ways of looking at it. One way of looking at this 5th line is to take the stance of Greg Winkup in his translation of I Ching, where he is saying that you're blocked, you can't move, and it's a good thing. If you were to move, it would be the wrong thing to do. Be happy where you are, and perhaps you're in a position now to sort of gather your strength, or maybe you just count your blessings. With standstill, you're thinking you should be going somewhere else, but maybe you don't have to go anywhere. Maybe things are fine, and maybe it's just a matter of perception. And standstill, the concept of standstill, being stuck, might then be quite subjective. We think we're stuck, but really our position is actually quite good. So that is one way of looking at it. An alternative approach is to say that things are changing. We are full of fear, it is true, because we believe that nothing is going on. We believe we're stuck. We're worrying about failure, but it doesn't matter. We can progress. And this moving line, the fifth line moving, it talks about mulberry shoots. And I don't know anything about gardening and mulberries, but what the I Ching says is that the mulberry shoots are growing quickly. And so you're dealing with an energy that is unstoppable. And so what we need to do is attach ourselves to the mulberry shoots. I think the Wilhelm translation talks about the mulberry shoots being cut, and they get even stronger when they're cut. And so if we align ourselves to what is growing, we literally, what it talks about, tying things to mulberry shoots. So we tie ourselves to the mulberry shoots, and we will grow with the mulberry shoots. And so we might interpret that as saying, we're in a situation where there is standstill. But you're not going to get standstill everywhere. Ask yourself, where is the growth? Where is the progress? Where is there about to be progress? And we need to seek it out. We seek it out, and we attach ourselves to the positive element, or rather perhaps we align ourselves with the positive element. And by doing that, there is no stopping us, and we keep moving. So the day doesn't start well, but it gets better, and we start to see the possibilities of progress, and then we indeed move to a new hexagram, and that new hexagram is progress, hexagram number 35. You can see the fifth line moves. So that was three unbroken lines, was like that, but then the fifth line moves, so we get to hexagram 35, which is progress. And that's perhaps all there is to be said. We have been in a difficult situation. It didn't appear that things were moving, and we were upset about it. But then, in the end, we make the breakthrough. Okay, it may not be as dramatic as a breakthrough, but we are making solid progress. So I think that the day should end on, quite a good note. And I want to finish with the horoscope of Mother Teresa, who would be 115 today. So happy birthday, Mother Teresa. And she is a very controversial figure. I know that Mother Teresa is seen as being sort of a byword for saintliness. We can't all be Mother Teresa. That's how we see it. But there is another narrative about Mother Teresa. For example, Christopher Hitchens, he did a film called Hell's Angel, which you can see on YouTube. If you look up Hell's Angel and Mother Teresa, you can get a different view on her. And he talks about her, and he mentions the fact that she was discovered in late 1960s by Malcolm Muggeridge. And Malcolm Muggeridge, I don't know, he was involved in television. I don't really know a great deal about him, but he was, in his day, he was very famous in the UK. And he went to Calcutta, and he was amazed, and they got some film of her using a new film technology, and it was a dark room, and they brought this film back, and it was all bright, and in the film Hell's Angel, someone involved in the work said, look what Kodak has produced. It's wonderful. This Kodak has produced this new film. And Malcolm Muggeridge said, it wasn't Kodak. It was God. This is something quite divine. And so that was how it all started. I think in the late 1960s that she got discovered, and as Christopher Hitchens, when talking about this discovery, he said, this profane marriage between tawdry media hype and medieval superstition. That's how he saw it. And so, she is controversial, and she was a Virgo. And so here is her chart. And so, August 26, 1910, born in Skopje, and I don't have a time of birth for Mother Teresa. I mean, there are times that people have suggested, but they're not confirmed. So I'm just going for a noon chart. And Mother Teresa is just was incredibly earthy. We've got Sun, Mars, Mercury, Moon, and Saturn in Earth signs plus Uranus. So she's got 5 traditional planets in the Earth signs plus a North Node in Taurus. And this is perhaps telling us something about the Earth. It's easy to look at Earth and say, oh, well, the Earth is just all about money and the material side of things. But the Earth does have its own spirituality to it. It has its own earthiness, if you like. And so she knows what needs to be done, and and it's also with Earth, it's an acceptance of the way things are, about the cycles of that unfold in the human life. So these people, the people who came to see her or came to die in her mission in Calcutta, that's the way it goes. There are poor people, they are sick, and we look after them, and they die, and that is part of the cycle, and we are doing our work. And I think she said that she was serving the poor for the love of God. Yeah, it is very earthy. And in particular, she's got 3 planets in Virgo. Now, the question is, how do you see 3 planets in Virgo? Now, Christopher Hitchens, in his film Hell's Angel, he quoted from Mark Twain. I assume Mark Twain said this. I mean, if Christopher Hitchens, he wouldn't misquote someone, would he? I mean, a very learned figure. Christopher Hitchens, who had a very good memory, and he quoted from Mark Twain, and Mark Twain said, "Give a man a reputation as an early riser, and he can sleep till noon." And so there is this potential hypocrisy about Virgo, which I think that Christopher Hitchens is highlighting. Of course, Christopher Hitchens was an atheist, certainly would not believe in astrology, and so the hypocrisy of Mother Teresa might be that she comes over as being incredibly compassionate, helping the poor, yet the reality might be different, and perhaps the hypocrisy might be different. And so in terms of the hypocrisy, I mean, the film gives an example of a 15-year-old boy who was supposedly dying, and he was dying. He had an incurable kidney infection, but it was pointed out that this boy, he just needed a course of antibiotics, and that was it. And if he'd been given a course of antibiotics at an early enough stage, he would have been able to survive, but they didn't. And in the end, he needed an operation, but they wouldn't give an operation. So this question of suffering and compassion, it seems compassionate, but how compassionate is it really? And what is the underlying purpose? And I looked at the sign Virgo a few days ago. I was trying to categorize Virgo, and I was looking at sort of Virgo politicians and dictators and people who were often very unpleasant. And it seems to me that a recurring theme with Virgos is that the means justify the end. We must do whatever it takes to get to that end, whatever that end might be. And so this raises the question, what is the end as far as Mother Teresa is concerned? Now, she's a Christian. She was a Christian. She was a Catholic nun. So the end is perhaps to get to heaven. And how are you getting to heaven? Well, you could say that you are getting to heaven on the backs of the poor. This is what you do. You might claim that it's serving the poor for the love of God, that's possible. But with Virgo, there could be an ulterior motive. You are giving yourself some sense of sort of spiritual satisfaction. You're getting to heaven, but and that's what the poor are there for. And so you could see that as you could possibly see that as a possibility in her chart. And her chart is, you could argue, is very harsh. Now, we don't know exactly where her moon is because I don't have a time of birth, but she has a moon and Saturn in. She has a moon and Saturn in Taurus, so Moon-Saturn conjunction. This woman perhaps has a sort of a tough view of the world, and the mission. It was a tough place to work, and people were expected to behave in a particular way, and it was certainly driven by ideology. Well, obviously, I suppose that's logical. It is a Catholic mission, but there is this feeling with Mother Teresa that that when you've got someone who is being so lionized by everyone, where everyone thinks she's wonderful, then there's got to be a problem somewhere along the line. And certainly Christopher Hitchens' documentary, Hell's Angel, really gets at that criticism. And now other things in her chart, she does have a Uranus-Neptune opposition, and this Uranus-Neptune opposition, you could say that says something about her own spirituality. Uranus and Neptune is about wanting to go beyond oneself and perhaps being in contact with God. If you want to be really positive about it, she's in touch with something, beyond herself. And Albertine, of course, says about Uranus and Neptune, it is elimination of the waking consciousness. It's not just about the material world. You're going beyond that. But Mother Teresa was, in her own way, very grounded with all those planets in Earth signs, and it's kind of interesting thinking about her and Christopher Hitchens. That Christopher Hitchens, has a reputation for being obviously he's dead now, but he had a reputation for being certainly being an atheist. That was a big part of who he was. And so if you think about the element Earth, you could say, well, it's about money and it's about something that is real, and religion is sort of pie in the sky. Well, I don't think that Mother Teresa necessarily reflects this. This is what it is all about. And maybe Earth is accepting the transience of this physical life, and we've got to be thinking about what is beyond it. If you're earthy, you're going to die. Shakespeare was a Taurus, and Shakespeare, a lot of Shakespeare's work is about the inevitability of death, and what does one do about death? We're going to die. We can get really excited about things, but in the end it's just all nothing. And that's a very Taurean approach. And likewise with Mother Teresa, she knows how it is. She knows how it's going to end, and so that might inform her spirituality. That really is possible. And interesting with Mother Teresa, she has no personal planets in water signs, or no traditional planets in water signs. She's got Neptune in Cancer, Chiron in Pisces, South Node in Scorpio, but these are not traditional planets. These are discovered, Chiron and Neptune are discovered planets. So she essentially has no water in her chart. So I think that this does provide her with a sort of a harshness and a lack of emotionality, and perhaps in a way a realism to her work. Now, you compare that with Christopher Hitchens' chart, and you could say that Christopher Hitchens is all in the air. He is, in a way, less grounded than Mother Teresa from an astrological perspective. So Christopher Hitchens, who wrote this, who created this film, that film Hell's Angel is devastating. I think he wrote a book. He wrote a book about her as well. I think called The Missionary Position, where he really attacked her reputation. And I think it was largely because of Christopher Hitchens that her reputation has been undermined. I mean, I think before Christopher Hitchens, everyone, thought she was wonderful, that she was, an incredibly saintly figure, the personification of godliness. But now, that has changed. And, Christopher Hitchens has, incredibly, he has no planets in Earth, no planets in water. Like Mother Teresa, he has something in common with Mother Teresa. They don't have much water in their chart. But he doesn't have any earth. And so it's all about, for him, it's all about ideas and concepts. And his ideas can be a surrogate for reality, because he was such an effective arguer that what he said just sounded real. It had to be real. The fact that there is no God, that we're all sort of deluding ourselves, and his views on other matters politically. He could. That's perhaps why he was able to be creative. He's creating an image of reality, but is it real? And that might be a question one has with Christopher Hitchens. And then there is some of the people that Mother Teresa got involved with. Well, one person is Jean-Claude Duvalier, the dictator in Haiti. She had a famous connection with Jean-Claude Duvalier, and she received money from him. And so, this is a very sort of Virgo thing that, that Mother Teresa would probably argue, the ends justify the means. It doesn't matter who they are. If they're providing money to her charity, it doesn't matter. That is Virgo. That is a very earthy approach. But it didn't do a great deal for her reputation. I mean, here is okay. We look at Mother Teresa and her line up with Jean-Claude Duvalier. So Jean-Claude Duvalier, he had his Saturn at 26 Virgo, so his Saturn was on her Mercury, and so perhaps she was taken in by Duvalier. Her Mercury perhaps her Mercury in Virgo saw someone, and this was a man who was prepared to provide money, but it didn't help. And so look at Jean-Claude Duvalier had a Mars square Saturn in his horoscope. I mean, that's a very difficult aspect. Difficult aspect for a dictator. Well, I mean, perhaps that would make him more of a dictator. I mean, his father, because he was Bébé Doc Duvalier, and his father was Papa Doc Duvalier, and so Jean-Claude Duvalier had a Chiron Mars opposition square Saturn. So you could say with Chiron, maybe he was feeling some feeling of sort of guilt there, and he somehow linked up with Mother Teresa through her Mercury Pluto. So there's an interesting link there. But you may say that at some level he was confusing Mother Teresa, and she didn't really see the implications of getting involved or being associated with Jean-Claude Duvalier, because that is not great for her reputation. And then there is Mother Teresa's death. So she died just after Princess Diana. So Princess Diana died on, I think, was it August the 31st, 1997, and Mother Teresa died just afterwards. And this is the horoscope for her death. So Mother Teresa died at the time of an almost exact conjunction between the Moon and Venus in Libra, and you could say Moon and Venus says something about women in general. Moon-Venus conjunction in Libra. The death of a woman. I don't think the Moon-Venus conjunction in Libra doesn't in itself talk about a death of a woman, but it perhaps saying that the female energy is quite prominent in terms of the news flow with Moon conjunct Venus, and Saturn was also involved at the time, and Jupiter was on the midheaven, and so Jupiter on the midheaven. Don't forget, when you're dealing with death charts, Jupiter is often prominent because Jupiter is a planet of death, because it provides release, and so it's not surprising to see Jupiter on the midheaven. And I know lots of people die in Calcutta, but here you're dealing with someone prominent who is dying. What does Shakespeare say? It's something like when a pauper dies. I've lost the quotation. When a pauper dies, no one cares. The planets don't care. But when the heavens themselves blaze forth the death of princes, or someone like Mother Teresa. So that's perhaps not surprising, that Jupiter's on the midheaven. And as far as the transits she had when she, at the time of her death. Now, Mother Teresa has her Jupiter at 1349 Libra, and Jupiter was at 1346 Libra at the time of her death. So there was an exact Jupiter trine Jupiter at her death. And that may tell us several things. It firstly might indicate that it was an easy death. Jupiter is also a religious planet, and Jupiter is a very moral planet. It has definite views about right and wrong. I mean, as far as Mother Teresa was concerned, for example, she thought the biggest evil out there was abortion. And so if Jupiter was exactly trine her Jupiter at the moment of death, that would support a kind of a pro-Mother Teresa narrative that Jupiter is a planet of God, it's a planet of release, and so perhaps it's her moving to heaven, Jupiter trine Jupiter. I mean, that would be one way of looking at it. If you were an astrologer who was a big Mother Teresa fan, you would love that Jupiter transit Jupiter. And additionally, the Sun was conjunct Mars. So Mars in Virgo, the Sun was making the conjunction there pretty exactly on her Mars. And so that Mars may say something about her illness, what she was suffering. I think she'd had an accident not long before, but there were other things going on in her life, going on with her body. Her body was I think falling apart at that time, and certainly the Sun going on her Mars was something of a trigger. So those are a few thoughts on Mother Teresa. She is 115 today. So again, I wish Mother Teresa a happy birthday, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.